So here's Asia Live, then we're going to New Delhi today, in fact, to speak to our correspondent there, Vikram Singh. Firstly, Vikram, the stock market there rallying to reach record highs. Is the economy there recovering as it appears to be across much of the world?
Well, not exactly, Stuart. Now, India's benchmark stock index, the Sensex, did indeed reach a record high last week, beating pre-recession 2008 levels. So it is the highest it's ever been. And that is quite a remarkable turnaround given, the problems India's economy has been facing over the last few months. The currency has been crashing, the growth projections have been sinking, and inflation has been rising. Now, the turnaround, those problems that we've been facing over the last few months still exist, unfortunately. And this turnaround in the markets is in fact driven by foreign investors who've been pumping their money into India after the American Federal Reserve's decision to continue its quantitative easing or easy money policy in October. So external factors are responsible for this surge and not improving conditions at home.
So, Vikram, would you say there's a disconnect perhaps between the state of the economy and its surging stock markets?
Well, exactly, Stuart. The economy at the moment, the Indian economy, has been growing, in fact, at its slowest pace for the last decade. And many economists here think that that growth will dip below 5% for the next financial year. Now, that's very far away from the double-digit growth projections we were once looking at for India. There is, in fact, quite a disconnect. And the government is, in fact, not even focusing on growth anymore. With the elections coming up, they're looking at tackling inflation, which is, hovering around 9% for consumer price inflation. And they're struggling with that. In fact, that word, struggling, you could use it to describe the state of India's economy at the moment.
Now, Vikram, let's move on to something else. You discovered a wonderful children's newspaper there, which is designed to help underprivileged children, isn't it? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, that's right. Street children are amongst the most underprivileged, the most marginalized sections of India's society. Many of them, most of them, in fact, don't have access to schools. Many of them have to work in order to support themselves and their families. But here's a story about a special newspaper that's helping some of Delhi's street children by giving them work, education, and a voice.
Chetan and Rani are just 16 years old, and they're already seasoned journalists hunting for stories in the slums of Delhi, which are largely ignored by the mainstream media. Today, they're conducting interviews in Raghubir Colony, a slum of 35,000 families in western Delhi. Many stories here reflect their own experiences.
Yes, you've got to keep on studying. It's very important.
But I left school last year.
Why aren't you going to school?
My parents decided against it.
No, you must go. It's good for you. Why did your parents say no?
They don't have the money.
Chetan and Rani have written hundreds of portraits like this for their newspaper Balaknama, which literally translates into a child's life.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A doctor.
A doctor? Well, you'll have to study very hard to become one. It's almost like these children don't exist because they don't have a voice. They're like ghosts. Nobody listens to them because they don't have any money. But they're still human beings.
An estimated 300,000 children live on the streets of Delhi. Most don't go to school and have to work just in order to survive. And that's one of the reasons why this newspaper is a success. It pays these budding journalists €30 a month and supports them academically as well.
If they are not being with the Barte Kadam, probably maybe lost somewhere working as a domestic help or in some restaurant or dhaba or somewhere where they're struggling for the mere survival, not the empowered. Here they learn the empowerment probably.
Makes you happy?
Yes.
I thought the newspapers wrote about actresses and celebrities. I never imagined that anyone would be interested in us. We were nothing. That's what I thought before.
50,000 copies of the next edition will be published in a few weeks' time. Over the last decade, nearly 50 young journalists have already written for the paper.
Yeah, fascinating newspaper there, Vikram. Thanks very much for that. That's our correspondent Vikram Singh joining us from New Delhi for today's Asia Live. Well, Well, that's all from me for this hour of Live from Paris. Let's just remind you of that news which our correspondent gave to us about 10 minutes ago, as we can see some live images there coming out of Cairo of the court venue. We heard about 10 minutes ago, as I say, from our correspondents that Mohamed Morsi has arrived in Cairo for his trial, which is due to begin in around about an hour's time. So stay tuned. Shona Bhattacharya here after the break.